Sam Walton, yeah, he was an incredible, genius, fanatic. I remember reading his book, his autobiography. I think everyone should go out and read it. Made in America. There's a chapter. This is years ago now. I believe he wrote that he would hire a helicopter to take him around cities to basically scout out sites for new Walmart locations. So he was
Well, he was a pilot, both him and Buddy Walton, his brother. I think they were both pilots. And Sam was spending a lot of time, 10, 12, 14, 15 hours driving because as Walmart was growing, and then he discovered that, hey, if I have a tiny plane, it's going to be 45 minutes instead of 7 hours or something. And once he took to the skies, he was just unstoppable.
Yeah.
And so they would drive down, look at different sites. They would see two towns and they would see nothing in the middle of the two towns. But they say, hey, if you put the Walmart in the middle of these two towns,
Yep.
we'll pull from both of them, right?
Yep, that's incredible.
And so I think for quite a few, maybe the first 50, 70 Walmarts, it was all Sam Walton just flying around. And it actually made him very efficient. And I think he learned one thing that people don't appreciate about Walmart is Walmart embraced technology very early, big time. If you think about the airplane as technology or you think about computers, they put in the amount of capex he put into IBM mainframes very early when Walmart was a very small company. They were way ahead because his managers told him, we're not going to be able to run this place. Unless we automate, we won't be able to run it. And so he stepped up and invested big time.
That's incredible vision. So early on. The next mental model around compounders and how you scout out compounders. I remember you really brought to light the late investor, Mr. Rakesh, from India to the North American, European market. I had never heard from him. I think no one did until you started talking about him. But he had invested in that company, Titan, and that was just an incredible story. I believe you would bucket it into a compounder, but how do you look at compounders? What criteria do you use to select these next up-and-coming companies?
Yeah, so one of the things to keep in mind is that you really only truly understand a business after you own it. We may have an understanding that some businesses are great businesses before we own them because they're obvious. Like we can say MasterCard is a great business. We could say, Google is a great business and so on. But for the most part, most companies, you're going to really learn about them after you own them. And what I have found is that the truly great compounders, it may take you a long time. It may take you a few years of ownership to appreciate that this is the compounder. So one thing to keep in mind is that in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, there was this concept of the Nifty 50, which is you bought these 50 totally blue chip stocks, 2% of portfolio in each of them. You didn't bother with valuations. It didn't matter how expensive they were. These were Coke and Kodak and Polaroid and Xerox and, Colgate Palmolive and all of that, right? McDonald's and so on. So the idea was you buy these with no price discipline and you hold them forever and life is great. Now, the Nifty 50 in the crash of 73, 74 got taken out back and shot. Mm-hmm. Okay? There was no place to hide and it got decimated. That collapse in prices in 73, 74 was something. Coke was down to 6 times earnings or something. But there's some controversy whether Walmart was part of the Nifty 50 or not. There's one group that thinks it was, one group that thinks it wasn't. Let's just assume it was part of the Nifty 50. And let's assume that the Nifty 50 had a 2% weight in Walmart when Walmart had its IPO, I think in 70 or 71. And let's say the other 98% went to zero. From then till now, which is more than 50 years, you would have blown out the S&P.
Wow.
With a 98% zero, portfolio going to zero, 49 out of 50 bets not working, you would still have beaten the S&P. Okay? And there's a big lesson there. And the lesson is, first of all, that investing is an extremely forgiving business. In this case, a 98% error rate has been forgiven. Okay. The second is the key, the absolute key to doing well is letting the great businesses stay in your portfolio. So one of the mistakes I've made throughout my career is I've sold so many great businesses because of valuation. One of the dumbest things you can do. It took me a long time to figure out that that is extremely stupid. So we had an investment in 2012 in Fiat Chrysler.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, the market cap of Fiat Chrysler was about $5 or $6 billion. And we had invested maybe 50 or 60 million in Fiat Chrysler. Basically, we had a 1% ownership of Fiat Chrysler. Inside that 5-6 billion was 80% of Ferrari, which today has a market cap of $90 billion. Okay, so it was a very small part of Fiat Chrysler at that time in 2012. Now it's 90 billion. And if we had been so smart as to do nothing with it, that'd be a $900 million position for us.
Wow.
Okay, I mean, my total assets are $1 billion. Okay. So we probably captured maybe 150 million or something of value in a moment of brilliance when we sold Ferrari because it looked expensive. Really stupid. So if you look at the Walton family, so Sam Walton had passed on all the shares of Walmart to his kids way before the IPO, when it was just a nothing company.